Hello friends, welcome back to another episode of our ProRevenge, where you get your daily dose of satisfaction by listening to other people get what they deserve. In this episode there are 4 stories. The first is a revenge tale about an office food thief. The second story is a bit longer and involves a nightmare neighbor with a truly satisfying outcome. I hope you stay for the stories today and subscribe for future videos. This story is titled, "A CO worker was eating people's lunches, so I spiced things up and got them fired. I like to bring my own food to the office and we have a fridge to store it in. I keep my food in containers with my name clearly labeled on them. However, a CO worker would sometimes ignore the names on the food, assume it was theirs, heat it up, eat it, and then apologize. They did this enough to be an annoyance, but not enough for the employers to take serious action. This had been happening with my food once or twice a month. Last month I'd had enough. I ordered a bag of ghost chili peppers and put the entire bag into a large pot of chili that would last several days. I brought this to the office and ate it for lunch every day. Midweek, my lunch went missing. I was waiting for the person stealing my lunch to get a shock when they ate it. What actually happened was that someone got sent home sick. The next day they were absent, and I was told they went to the doctor for stomach pains. 2 weeks passed, and the worker who was absent refused to talk about the incident, saying HR was involved. I knew they were going to try to get me fired. So I went home and ordered another bag of ghost chili peppers. This time, I made a new batch of chili with only 1 chili in a single container. I placed it in the freezer. The following Monday I was told I had an HR meeting that day. I refused to attend immediately and said they needed to give me 24 hours to find someone to join me. The next day I brought my manager to the meeting and my ghost chili infused chili. In short, I was told I could be fired for trying to poison the person stealing my lunch. I asked if they admitted to stealing people's lunches, which they did. I then explained that I had the chili in question with me, that I enjoy spicy food, and that my preference for spicy food shouldn't prevent me from eating it at work. My manager agreed it was on the person who took my lunch without knowing how spicy it was, and I shouldn't be held liable if they ate something of someone else's that didn't agree with them. My manager and I then ate some of the chili and offered it to the others in the meeting. Some tried it and agreed that, while it was spicy, it was clearly something I enjoyed, as I was fine eating it. The meeting ended, and nothing further happened. I wasn't called into another meeting, and my lunch stopped disappearing. However, the person who stole our lunches only received a slap on the wrist and was allowed to stay at work. Soon after, lunches went missing again. My manager went to HR stating that lunches were still being taken, that he knew who was responsible, and that he had proof. When asked for evidence, he presented the meeting record with a highlighted line where the CO worker admitted to stealing lunches. They were fired the next day for theft of property and told they would not receive a reference. In the story, the original poster mentioned that the guy would eat the lunch first and apologize afterward. I don't understand it. If you didn't bring it, why on earth are you eating it? This story is titled, "I forced my Jekyll and Hyde neighbor to move out, but I didn't stop there." My wife and I live in a townhouse complex. For those unfamiliar, it's like a row of houses in a gated community. Our complex has 3 rows with 6 houses each, and 1 row with 5 to make room for the community pool. The 2 troublesome neighbors in question lived across from us. One in Unit 10 directly across and the other in Unit 11 to their right. The driveway separating each row is wide enough to fit 2 cars comfortably if both are moving slowly, allowing them to pass each other easily. When they first moved in, we got along well with them. I even stopped to play games with their kids when walking past their house from the car park. I thought they were good families. When their kids did something annoying, like kicking balls against our wall, which caused a loud thump inside, I'd tell the parents, and the kids would face consequences. I mention this because, in just one day, they went from a nice family to assaulting my wife. One night we came home from an event. Another neighbor reached the driveway before us, so he went first. The people in Unit 10, whom I'll now refer to as Psycho Lady and her husband, had their family van parked in front of their house across from ours. Their kids were getting in and out of the van while Psycho Lady kept an eye on things. Our other neighbor, who lives next to us on our side of the complex, let's call him Nice Neighbor, slowly drove past the van without any issue. My wife was right behind him and did the same, slowly passing the van in full view of Psycho Lady. Strangely, nothing happened immediately. My wife passed without even a glare. I got out to open the garage door for her to park. We reversed the car into the garage, and I was about to close the rolling door when Psycho Lady stormed over, screaming and yelling, accusing us of trying to run over her kids. She barged into our garage, pushed past me, and banged on the driver's side window so hard that my wife had to roll it down to avoid it breaking. Psycho Lady began pointing and yelling about how dare my wife try to run over her kids. To clarify, from the time my wife drove past the van to when Psycho Lady came raging over was 2 minutes. We don't know why she didn't confront nice neighbor or say anything to my wife as she drove past. It was the most bizarre delayed reaction ever, and to this day, we don't know the real reason they targeted us. If it was truly about running over their kids, she would have confronted nice neighbor or my wife immediately. My wife felt cornered and scared. I was about to drag Psycho Lady out of the garage when her husband stormed over and threatened me not to touch his wife. After a few minutes of her screaming at my wife, Psycho Lady went too far. She slapped my wife hard across the face, leaving multiple scratch marks and drawing blood with her sharp nails. That was the last straw for me. My adrenaline kicked in. I'm not a violent person and believe the best offense is to avoid a fight altogether, but I stormed towards Psycho Lady. Her husband grabbed my shoulder from behind, demanding to know where I was going. I turned and punched him in the stomach, then ignored him as he went down. I grabbed Psycho Lady from behind as she was still attacking my wife and threw her to the ground outside the garage. I told them to leave us alone and get out. We went inside and called the police to file a report. The police took notes and photos. I admitted to punching the husband in defense of my wife, as I had nothing to hide. The police didn't do much beyond taking notes, and that was it. The sudden change in their behavior shocked us. They went from being kind and amazing to complete jerks. In the weeks and months that followed, we faced insults, glares, and threats from Units 10 and 11, as Unit 11 joined their friends in targeting us. Most other neighbors in the complex took our side, having seen or heard what happened. One thing was clear: Units 10 and 11 had to go. We own our home and weren't about to pack up our lives because Psycho Lady wanted to start drama. I spoke to their landlord, who owns Units 10, 11, and 5 other houses in the complex, and is a good friend. I showed him all our documented proof of the harassment and threats. He seemed concerned, but not enough to evict them, likely because he valued their rent payments. So I took matters into my own hands. I had their phone number from when we were on good terms. I got a burner phone and signed them up for every spam email I could find, ordered takeout to be paid on delivery every night, and ensured their mailbox was stuffed with advertisements. I even arranged for people to knock on their door expecting fun activities, only to leave angry, causing Psycho Lady and her husband to argue constantly. I made sure their phone rang at all hours of the night. They even threw their phone out the window in frustration. As a final touch, I had a friend who runs a dog washing business visit, pretending they had booked her. When they screamed that they had no dogs and told her to leave, she realized what we'd been dealing with. They berated her, throwing in racial slurs, a terrible mistake. She took out the hose meant for washing dogs and sprayed Psycho Lady, her husband, in the inside of their house, soaking the carpet. I think they finally got the hint and moved out a month later. Unit 11 followed a few weeks after. The entire complex celebrated with a huge pool party. But I wasn't done. Psycho Lady assaulted my wife for no reason, so I ensured they faced serious consequences. When we were on good terms, I knew they were on temporary visas while applying for permanent residency. I contacted immigration, provided their new address, and submitted the police report detailing their assault on us in our home. Since Psycho Lady didn't file her own report, ours was the definitive record. It was enough to get them deported. I know their home country has limited job opportunities, which is why many people from there move here. I feel zero remorse, none, zip, nada, for getting them removed. That's pro-revenge. You don't assault someone out of nowhere and expect no consequences. I wonder if there's another reason they flipped out. What could turn a good neighbor into a horrible one? Maybe the original poster's wife had an affair with Psycho Lady's husband? Just a thought. This story is titled, "Don't Want to Do Your Chores, Son? Well, have fun being stuck at home." This story deserves some context. It's actually a pro-revenge tale about something my father did to me. After I graduated from high school and still hadn't found my calling, my parents told me I could live with them rent-free as long as I did one very important thing: help out with the chores. I was also not to bring any girls or friends home after 9 p.m., and was expected to occasionally offer to help with the groceries for the week. For about 3 months I was mostly adhering to the second and third rules. That all changed when I met my first adult lady friend. We'll call her Roxy because she was a pretty awesome chick. Now, Roxy was a super bad influence on me. She started getting me to stay out late and spend most of my paychecks on booze, weed, and other stuff. I started slipping down a rabbit hole from which I almost didn't return. From time to time, my dad would remind me, saying, "Hey, son, you need to make sure you're helping with the chores. Also, would you mind throwing $50 toward groceries this week?" Those reminders were ignored. After 3 months out of school and about a month and a half of knowing Roxy, we came home from a concert in another city. For anyone around my dad's almost old fart age, I was at a concert for Papa Roach. Roxy told me she was too tired to go home and wanted to crash at my parents' house. The time was 2:30 a.m. We pulled up to the driveway and I told her to be quiet. Of course she wasn't, because it was Roxy. As soon as we stepped inside the house and locked the door, she started screaming the chorus line from Twisted Sisters, "We're not going to take it," at the top of her lungs. Like clockwork, my parents' light came on and my dad came out of his room like a cheetah, a darn fast cheetah, I tell you. He saw both of us, turned his head back toward his room and said, "Take her home now." I immediately turned around and took Roxy home. She was upset and told me I should stand up to my old man, yada yada yada, and defend my rights as an adult. As soon as we got to her place, I knew I couldn't go home, so I stayed at her apartment. The next morning there was a text on my phone. It said, "Come home at your earliest convenience." Love, Dad. I knew I was in big trouble because first, my dad never texts me, and second, when he does, he's more of a John Madden play-by-play kind of guy. What I mean is, he'll give you a paragraph of words for what could have been a single sentence or two. I kissed Roxy goodbye, certain it was the last time I'd ever see another human being, and headed home. When I got there, my dad was sitting at the table with a pen and a piece of paper in front of him. He told me to sit down and then place the paper in front of me. The paper was an actual itemized list. He explained that for the last month and a half I hadn't done any of my chores. He'd calculated that, based on the roughly 4 to 5 hours a weekend I wasted for him, it amounted to his pay, which was $25 an hour. He'd taken 4 hours, multiplied by 6 weekends, multiplied by $25 per hour, and figured I needed to pay him $600 for the time wasted. For good measure, he added an extra $100 for the 2 times he'd asked me for $50 to help with groceries. He got up, walked over, and said there was a dotted line for me to sign, stating I would pay it all back in 1 month's time. I added it up in my head and told him I barely made $1,000 after taxes each month. He said I should have thought about that before I brought a girl home at 2:30 in the morning. He told me that if I didn't sign the paperwork, I had 30 minutes to grab my stuff and get out. I almost started crying and told him I wanted to sign the paper, but asked if he could at least give me a 1-month extension. He put his hand to his chin, thought for a moment, looked down at me, and agreed. He said, "You have 2 months to pay me $600. Oh, and by the way," he paused for a good 20 seconds and continued, "if you don't pay and continue to break my 3 simple rules, there will be consequences in your future." He revised the contract, and I signed it. A month and a half went by, and I'd managed to pay him $450. I hadn't seen Roxy as much over the past 2 months for obvious reasons. Her cash flow had dried up a bit. Then, on day 45, she called and said she missed me, wished we could hang out, and asked why I was working so much overtime. I told her I had to pay my dad back or get kicked out. Of course, she ended the call. The next day, she texted me about a show in another city, saying it was a band she really liked and had wanted to see forever, plus she missed snuggling up at concerts. Stupidly, I agreed to go with her. While we were there, my wallet got stolen out of my pocket. We went home, I dropped Roxy off, and a few days later my dad came knocking on my door. It was now officially day 55. He asked if I wanted to pay him the last $150 or wait until the 2 months were up. I told him I'd get it for him and would go to the bank right then, as I'd just gotten paid the day before. I looked around my room for my wallet, which was nowhere to be found. I checked the jeans I wore at the concert with Roxy. No wallet there either. I started panicking as I couldn't find it anywhere. I went to my dad, who was in the backyard cutting grass, and told him what was going on. He gave me half a grin and said, "Sorry for your situation, but I'm treating you like a tenant now. Go to the bank, get my money, and when you come back, pay me the $150 and we'll go from there." I rushed to the bank, and my heart sank when the teller told me my account had a balance of $3.42. I headed back home and told my dad what happened. He put his hand on my shoulder and said, "That's rough. Well, you know how I'm going to get my $150, right?" I told him there was no way I could get the money to him in 5 days or less. He said, "Okay, how about I drive you to work, seeing as you don't have a driver's license right now?" He drove me to work, where I was for about 8 hours. While I was at work, my dad pulled out his massive collection of Craftsman tools and proceeded to drain all the fluids from my car. He got a buddy to come over and help completely remove my motor, transmission, and tires. My dad and his mechanic friend managed to do all this during my 8-hour shift. At the end of my shift, my dad was in the parking lot waiting for me, wearing coveralls with grease all over his arms, which I found odd. He drove me home, and I noticed my car was pulled into the garage and on jack stands. I looked at my dad and asked, Dad, what's up with my car?" He pointed to the garage and said, "Go ahead and see. I've got my $150 today." I jumped out of the car as it went into park and ran to my car. There was a note from my dad's mechanic friend stating that the motor, transmission, and tires had all been sold to him for $150. He added that he'd happily return the items and help me install them, but I had to work for him on my 2 days off for the next 4 weeks, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. I fell over crying, obviously, and after my dad laughed a bit, he told me my first shift started tomorrow. I spent the next 4 weeks working with my dad's mechanic friend on my days off. After 2 days of working, we'd bring a few pieces of my car back to my house, and he'd teach me how to put them together. Slowly but surely, I learned to be my own do-it-yourself garage mechanic. This may not fit here, but my dad pulled off a ProRevenge on me. Shortly after I lost my car, Roxy dumped me. My dad took 6 months out of my life to teach me how to be a somewhat responsible adult. The icing on the cake? As soon as we had my car back together and running, my dad walked up to me and gave me an envelope with $450 in it. Inside was a note that said, "Stop being a knucklehead." It was the perfect example of tough love. I love that he gave me back the $450 after all of it. We need more people like my dad in this world. There are too many entitled parents out there. This story is titled, "Forcing Workers into a Dangerous and Life-Threatening Situation." This will backfire in ways you couldn't imagine. This is a story about how I resigned from my warehouse job once and for all. The company I used to work for implemented a new way of paying management commissions and bonuses. It was a money saved, money paid type of system. Every little thing had a bonus attached to it. For example, if you saved on stationery this month, you got $100. If you didn't spend any money to repair the store, you got $500. Normally this wouldn't affect us, but there were a few categories that were outright dangerous and, unfortunately, had the biggest bonuses attached. It started with a manager, an area manager, wanting us to change light paneling in the store. There were a few problems with this. First, the lights were so old that the wiring was faulty and unpredictable. Second, the way the lights were rigged required training as an electrician to remove the panels and replace the bulbs. Management hoped we would undertake the work, saving the cost of hiring an electrician and earning them a hefty bonus. I outright refused, but a few of my colleagues were roped into it. After one particular incident where a worker received a mild shock, we all banded together and said, "No way." A week later, we were emailed a link to a new online training course. The main theme was that warehouse employees were to undertake various maintenance tasks, with the primary focus on changing lights, light panels, and similar tasks. If we didn't complete the training, we would be deemed unsuitable employees, not meeting requirements, and could possibly be terminated. I started taking screenshots of everything, including the mandatory test. It became evident very quickly that I was one of the only employees who refused to complete the training. I was confronted by the manager, who said I had 1 week to complete it or I'd be written up with an official warning. Because of the severity of the warning, I could face disciplinary action and possible immediate termination. What management didn't count on was anyone sharing this information with outsiders. I put together a comprehensive packet with all the new tests that would force warehouse employees to do dangerous tasks. I also included copies of the new management bonus structure, which explicitly detailed that if employees could do installation repairs and save the company money, management would receive a hefty bonus. There was even an award for most money saved. I made sure to include plenty of emails and texts showing that management was violating numerous health and safety guidelines, especially with the lack of warehouse staff to safely unload and load trucks and shipping containers. One of the worst things I found was on page 36 of our contracts, which stated that we weren't officially allowed to unload transfers and trucks. The company would hire professional contractors to unload, and it was up to us to take over once the goods were safely unloaded. Why? Because the company didn't want to cover us medically if we injured ourselves unloading. I checked in with my best friend, who is a lawyer. He helped me navigate any non-disclosure issues and pointed me in the right direction for sending off this information. Once I sent everything off, things went back to normal for a while. Management kept pressuring me to sign off on undertaking dangerous tasks to secure their bonuses, and I refused. It all came to a head when the area manager essentially said, "If you don't sign off on this next shift, I'll fire you on the spot." No matter how much I pleaded my case, the area manager tried to spin it as a new company-wide initiative and said we should take pride in our workplace. I struggled with this a lot and didn't know what to expect when I got off the bus and made my way to the store the next morning. When I walked in ready for my next shift, the store was essentially deserted. I opened the warehouse, checked the transfer sheets, grabbed my water bottle, and headed into the store to fill it up. As I was standing by the water filter, the customer service manager came downstairs with a cheeky smile on his face. Apparently, the manager was under close review and was currently in mediation, having to answer for all the corners she cut to make her bonuses. The best part? The area manager and general manager were both fired. They were given the choice to resign without any payouts or benefits, or the shareholders and the CEO of the company would begin an investigation into their practices. I couldn't believe it. A few hours later, the CEO and CFO arrived and tried to offer me a bonus for speaking up, along with a formal apology and a raise if I dropped the case. I just grabbed my bag and resigned right there on the spot. No way was I dropping anything. I walked out of there with a sense of satisfaction, knowing they'd be investigated. From what I saw online and on the company's websites, it took a long time for the company to recover. Even to this day, you can see the company has been bought and changed hands multiple times. They lost millions, faced bad publicity, and lost public and employee trust, all to save a few bucks and reward greedy management. As a reader dropping a comment on these stories, I'm absolutely loving the mix of clever pettiness, righteous justice, and full-on nuclear consequences. These tales are a roller coaster of frustration and satisfaction, with entitled jerks and shady managers getting their comeuppance in epic ways. Here's my take on each, written like I'm chiming in on a forum. A CO worker was eating people's lunches, so I spiced things up and got them fired. "Oh, this is spicy in every sense." The lunch thief casually eating labeled food and apologizing after is such a bold move, but OP's ghost chili trap? Absolute genius. Sending the thief to the doctor with stomach pains was a perfect wake-up call. Bringing a milder chili to the HR meeting to prove it's just their taste was a pro move, and the manager using the thief's own admission to get them fired? Chef's kiss? The commenter's confusion about eating someone else's food is so relatable. Seriously, why touch it? Got any other office revenge stories this fiery? I forced my Jekyll and Hyde neighbor to move out, but I didn't stop there. Psycho lady assaulting OP's wife over a baseless running over kids claim is straight up unhinged. The escalation with threats and vandalism from her and Unit 11 is next level crazy. OP's spam calls, takeout orders, and dog washer hose down were petty perfection, but reporting them to immigration for deportation? That's nuclear! The community pool party celebration is the wholesome twist I love. The commenter's affair theory is a wild guess, but yeah, what flipped these neighbors? Anyone else gone scorched earth on a neighbor like this? Don't want to do your chores, son? Well, have fun being stuck at home. Dad's tough love here is legendary. OP slacking on chores and sneaking Roxy in at 2:30 a.m. Screaming twisted sister was asking for trouble, but dismantling the car for $150? That's pro-level parenting. Making OP work for the mechanic to rebuild it while teaching car skills is such a power move. The $450 refund with the stop being a knucklehead note? Perfect. The commenter's right, we need more dads like this. Got any tough love stories that turned you around? Forcing workers into a dangerous and life-threatening situation? This will backfire in ways you couldn't imagine. Forcing warehouse workers to do electrical work for bonuses is beyond reckless. Mild shocks could have been deadly. OP's screenshots and lawyer friend exposing the safety violations and bonus scheme was a masterstroke. The deserted store and fired managers show how hard karma hit. The CEO's bribe attempt was desperate. Props to OP for walking away. The commenter's note about the company's downfall is spot on. Greed tanked them. Ever blown the whistle on a shady workplace like this? That's it for this episode of our ProRevenge series. If you aren't subscribed, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because I upload videos almost every day. See you all in the next one.